Welcome back to the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. Today we have the one and only Mr. Tansel Ali. Welcome, Tansel.
Thank you, Sandra. Sorry, Sally.
I'm so happy to have you here, Tansel. I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm going to introduce you and then we'll get down to it. So Tansel is most famously known for memorizing 2 yellow page phone books in 24 days. And you are a 4-time Australian memory sports champion. And now for 20 years, or more than 20 years now, you've been helping people improve performance, individuals, teams, organizations. You're a speaker now, highly sought after speaker. And having competed as a mental athlete internationally, you've represented Australia at the World Memory Championships. I know that your mental athleticism has taken you all around the world. And in your spare time, you've been busy writing 3 international best-selling books: The Yellow Elephant, How to Learn Almost Anything in 48 Hours, and The 4 Most Powerful Memory Techniques. You've appeared on many TV shows. In fact, that's where we were just talking before we went live about how we met 10 years ago. And it was when we saw you on a TV show and thought, he's incredible. So you've been on Redesign My Brain with Todd Sampson. You've been on Sunrise, The Project, The Morning Show, Today Tonight, ABC, all of them, Current Affairs, Studio 10, all of the big ones. And now the great Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. You're a TEDx speaker. You have memory techniques. You teach in schools to children, to people. You're a memory coach. You are so much, Tansel. I could go on and on and on. You're also a blooming nice bloke. I've known you for 10 years and you are one of the loveliest men I have ever come across. You're a family man. You're an extremely wonderful dad. And you've done all on this. You're very, very humble as well. So I know you would say, there's nothing special about me. I've just learned these techniques, which you're going to teach us about too. But you are a special man. You have determination, you have perseverance, you have a real will to help other people, which I really love about you. So you're not just a bloke who, did a gimmick of learning the yellow pages. You help people. You've helped people for the last 20 years. So there's so much we can talk about. And I think I want to start by asking you about, for those people who think this session's about how to improve our memory, which of course we're going to get into that with you too. But we know, and specifically, that the benefits of memory training are not just to improve your memory. I know that you talk about reducing stress and time management and achieving goals, and we've just had a conversation about finances. And you've also done all of these incredible feats with a health condition that for many can be debilitating. So I want to get into that too, and how you have managed to overcome your, could have been limits there too. So there's so much to go into. My first question for you is, when did you discover that memory training your brain for these exceptional feats of memory had all of these different holistic benefits for your greater health and greater brain? Let's start there.
Yeah, firstly, wow, what an intro. Thanks for that. I wasn't expecting, I thought you were just going to read the bullet points that you had in front of you, but thank you for those kind words. And thanks for having me at the summit. So I saw the names on there. I thought, wow, what an amazing lineup you've got. So congratulations, firstly, on putting this on. And I'm sure a ton of people are going to benefit from it. So thank you. And thanks for having me as well. So getting back to the question, what was it? No, I'm only kidding. Yeah. So I guess how I learned these skills and to see where it branched out was from just by learning the basics of memory. I thought, okay, I'm going to memorize a pack of cards. I'm going to memorize some numbers. Oh, there's a memory competition. I'll enter that. And that was just all memorizing. Once I started training more and more for international events and just competitions in general for the future, I started realizing that, memory is not just for remembering for competition. It's, well, hang on, there's students out there wanting to learn. So I'm going to work with students. So I started helping students out to learn a lot better. And what I found was these students were not just remembering their content, they were getting their understanding up, right? So they were learning a lot more efficiently. They were more effective as well with their learning. So instead of studying for hours and hours and hours, they'd use a few strategies, and now they'll have all the time in the world to focus on other areas. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Time management aspect to it. Okay. What could happen if you learnt a few skills and saved yourself some time here, or put in a little bit of effort to get maximum value out of that? And, I came across the 80-20 rule, the Pareto Principle, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of this stuff that connects onto there as well, which led me to the field of efficiency. I thought, wow, memory and efficiency, what else can be done? And as I start training more and more, I realized that there was a lot of strategic elements to my memorization. So, for example, in competition, we memorized, as you know, we memorize stories, not actual numbers or cards or anything like that. And if we get one mistake, we don't get like 39 out of 40 digits. We get 20 out of 40. If we make two mistakes, we get 0. So we're basically judged on effectiveness. We have to get everything perfect, and we have to do it in the fastest time possible. So what that means is the way that we train is we have to find strategies and ways to become more efficient, so to go as fast as we can and to not make mistakes at all.
Yep.
So just by training that in that space was essentially parallel to everyday life. So when I went and did some problem solving, I'll be looking at, okay, what's the quickest way according to the systems I've already created? What's the best way of communication? What's going to be more memorable, right? For me as a communicator. Hence, I got into speaking. I was a terrible speaker, right? Absolutely terrible. And I'm not saying I'm the greatest speaker now, but my speaking is based on what's going to have the greatest impact.
Yeah.
Now, rather than I have to get these words out there. Because you can write the best words, but if they've got no meaning, if they've got no connection to people, then it's kind of missed the point, right? So I've learned just by just living through the training and going through the process, that it's branched out into so many different areas I'd never thought of before. And I wasn't seeking those areas. I wasn't seeking, better time management, or how to, get rid of procrastination, or how to create focus and concentration. It just naturally came as a process of training my brain. It's like saying to someone, and we know this from a physical perspective, if we train ourselves physically and we're physically fit, then yeah, we can run a bit further or lift heavier things. So we know what we can do physically, but mentally, right, once we train that area, we know that we can, we're more creative now, and we can do a lot of cool mental things that we're not able to do before. So that was the scenario of that, okay, if I can work physically that way, I'm going to work mentally here. And unfortunately, people don't know how to train themselves in a mental space. So I guess that's how it all sort of flooded through, with all the side benefits of the memory training.
Yeah, awesome. And now you branch out into so many different things. And I love that, I think what you're saying is that by training the brain to be able to memorize more, which seems a specific thing, you're actually training your brain to be a better and more efficient processor. It's a better machine. I know you like computers. It's like you're training it to be a better processor. So here's the question, and this summit's all about practical information. So where I want to go is, you're talking about and I know that one of the things that you always say is, you were just persistent and determined to teach yourself these methods in how to train your brain. And I know there's specific methods that I'd love to get into about memory learning. But if someone's sitting here thinking, yeah, that sounds awesome, I want general, overall, better, improved processing capacity, where do they start? Where do they start to train? What do you do every day that it's not Sudokus? What do you do to train your brain?
You know, it's a really good question because, you know, when you think of memory tech, there's a lot of systems and strategies and techniques, and there's everything out there. But I only use one thing, believe it or not. I only use one thing, and anyone can do this, and it's using your imagination,
Yes.
right? Visualization. That's the key, right?
Yes.
That's the foundation to all memory encoding, to speed reading, to everything like that, is to get your visualization game right. So what do I mean by that? I'll take a classic example of speed reading, right? What people think of speed reading is reading really quickly.
Yep.
Right. Now, the whole idea isn't to read quickly. The whole idea there is to encode a bunch of words that give you context into an image. Right. So, for example, if we're watching a TV show or a movie, you don't sit there trying to memorize every single word, do you? You just sit back and watch because it's already encoded information. Right. When we're reading a book and we have something like an emails or whatever it is that's in front of us, a bunch of words, we have to encode that into images first before we can make sense of it. Right. And speed reading is that encoding. So how that works is, again, through visualization. Everything that we want to try and remember and understand, we have to encode, right, into images. So what that essentially means is that you need to be able to visualize. So if I said, for example, it was raining today, right? What we tend to do, and again, most people, I'd say some people are crazy like me, is they just visualize it raining.
Yeah.
Visualize raining, but that's just one little view. If you went outside and it's raining on you and you could feel the cool breeze and the wet rain from there, now that's taking it to another level now. That's using that visualization skill. If you're reading something and it's really boring and abstract, it says this contract must be signed by April, blah, 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 right? Statement, very boring, abstract. You can take that to another level by saying, okay, contract. What does a contract look like? Is it like an old parchment plate paper? Is it written in, cursive in fountain pen? And, April, oh, it's Easter time. So maybe it's during Easter time. So now you're adding all these elements, right? You're using your imagination and you're making it memorable. So that's what I mean by using this skill, is that what could you create further imagination, further stories to building your everyday life. So, if whatever you're memorizing or even not memorizing, that's just words there. It says coffee, right? Let's say, something says coffee. Well, what does coffee taste like? Is it really hot? Has it burnt your tongue? Now you're making it more memorable. So this is the key skill when it comes to memorization and encoding, is to visualize as best as you can, but also the next step on top of that is to use your emotions and feel. The feeling is what gets you to remember as well. Like, you can only go so far with visualization, but as soon as you add feeling on there, it's that next level. It's like combining heart and brain together. Yes. And once you have that, Greg Braden says in one of his videos, says, and he's quoting the Bible, it says, once the heart and mind come together, you can move mountains. So it's the same thing here as well. Add feeling on there, it'll be way more memorable.
Absolutely. And this is why you're such a fun guy and a fun dad, because it's all about stories, right? Stories, visualization, creativity. It's so important. We know it's important to kind of imagine the kind of life that you want to have, but what you're saying is that this is how you use it to remember. So I love, it's sort of a natural flow in for me when you talk about specific techniques such as the memory palace and things like that. It's fascinating. If you've never heard this before, the actual strategies of how you learn a load of boring stuff, or, that's harsh, that's judging the stuff, but I mean things that don't have an association to them, like a number, you put a fun association with them. So can you give us a little example so that people get how you work when you're trying to just memorize a specific things, whether it's names or numbers or whatever?
Yeah, look, names is a classic example because everyone wants to remember names. Some people are terrible at it, some people are good at it. I mean, good on them, great. Because we want to remember names, not because we want to remember the name, but we want to make the other person feel important. We want to build connection.
Yeah.
All that's, I mean, we're humans, we work for each other. That's it. Nothing else when you think about it, right? So that human connection is very important, but how do you do that? Like your name, for example, let's take Sally, right? We think, okay, what comes to my mind when I think of Sally? So it's like you're playing word association. That's how you remember a name, but there's many associations. So you have to visualize. If you're repeating the name over and over again, guess what you're doing? You're repeating the abstract. And that's a different part of the brain. So you're not really getting it. So you can repeat something 100 times and still forget.
Yep.
Right. So what you have to do is you have to create a visual for Sally. Now, what I think of, and I know people named Sally, right? So I can think of this other Sally that I know, right? And I say, okay, now I bring you two together. Maybe you're hugging each other, right? Or maybe you're pulling each other's hair, right? So next time I see you, oh, why is she pulling Sally's hair? Oh, it's Sally, right? And there used to be, Sally, the brand power lady, right, on TV. So if you remember that. So I can imagine you on TV, with a nice dishwashing liquid, selling that as selling the brand power lady. So I can make that association. So when people see me, for example, Tansel, they might say tinsel or, tonsil or yell out, hey, you tinsel, right? So it's just name association. You have to get it to that visual. Once you get that visual, you have to make a story because the story is what connects. That's the connection part. And connection is memory, right? So you have to picture not just tinsel, but tinsel maybe wrapped around my head and putting me on a Christmas tree or something like that, right? And like I said, with Sally, picturing you on TV presenting. So that's the connection. So that's the way to remember names instead of repeating over and over again and still forgetting.
What if you don't know anybody? What if it's I've heard you with super long names that people have to break down and come up with ways of remembering it. So give us some tips for doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Look, what I do is I use the example. I used to work with a guy named Vijay Ranganamachandran, right? Awesome guy, but difficult name. So what you can do is you can break up the name, obviously. So Vijay became a DJ, right? So I can imagine him DJing away. So I'm using a rhyming method with his name, right? Mike could have a bike, right? So you can make all that sort of stuff. So Vijay Arangan, so orangan. So I pictured orangutan. Right, was jumping on him, or my daughter's a little redhead, so she's a ranger. So I can have either way. I can make up a story. So let's just say, orangutan jumped on him while he was DJing. Right? So Rangan. And then Rama, I just rhyme it with drama. So you can use rhyming techniques, or you can use something that's similar, like orangutan, orangan. So that was Rama, and I usually have drama. So there's all this drama happening at the nightclub. He's DJing because this orangutan jumped on him. And Chandran, I just think of chundering, right?
So getting an insight into Tansel's brain.
That's it. So people usually by this point say, okay, what drugs are you on now?
But it's your extreme creativity because you train it in every day.
Well, the difference between, I guess, me as a trained memory person, as opposed to someone who's starting new or is about to start, is that we create these stories within milliseconds.
Yes.
Right? Because that's what we've been trained to do in the competitions. But anyone can get to this point as well, right? If you met someone today and you're trying to create these stories, it'll take you a bit of time. So it's practice. And I guess what I do when I work and coach people is to speed this process up so that it doesn't take too long, and they're getting it every time really quickly. And that's the difference between training your brain and just using it casually, these techniques.
So that's awesome, because I've often wondered that, and I've never asked you that. That's awesome. So what you're saying is, and that describes as well why this training is good for your whole brain, because we know being in a creative state is good for many things, including your health. And so you're training in this skill, and like any new skill, we have to go through a process and it takes time and then you have to repeat. But once you've got it down, it's implicit. You can just pull it out of the bag. You just do it without even having, thinking about how you're doing it. So that's really good to know, is that it just takes time. So it's kind of like you can really see how your creativity is improving as you practice. Because I've often wondered, when you're doing things like the phone books or these extreme competitions, how do you come up with new creative scenarios quickly every time? Because I kind of assume I'd just run out of stories. How do you just keep on doing, or do you recycle them? Like, is there a time where How does it work?
Everything is pretty much brand new, because when numbers come next to each other, they're always different. Like they're the same numbers, but what we do is we connect numbers to other numbers. So, and we memorize, I mean, in pairs of digits. So 2 digits, 2 digits, 2 digits, 2 digits, or some people have 1,000 pre-memorized images. So images from 000 to 999, and we pre-memorize that. So whenever 3 digits comes up against another 3 digits, we might say, oh, here's a dog and here's a cat, right? And now make a story. But the thing is, when you do that, the digits are always different next to each other. So you're always going to have a different story. And because we're using a system where we're creating, you know how on computers you create folders and you just put the information in folders, right? So there's a system called the memory palettes where you create folders in your brain, right? And each folder is in a different section. So when we're creating new stories, it's always brand new. So you're always working on your creativity. And I guess that's the massive benefit of training a brain using memory techniques, is because you get so good at creating something from nothing.
Yes.
Right? As opposed to using something recycled. Now, I can give a really good example. A lot of the top memorizers, memory athletes out there are really bad at remembering names, right? Believe it or not. Now, why is this the case? It's because when it comes to events like memorizing numbers and cards, that's already pre-memorized, right? They've already got a pre-memorized set of images for their numbers and cards. All they have to do is create new stories with where they put that in their brain, right? The folders. Right? And that doesn't take that much effort. Whereas with names, you have to rely on total creativity to make something new with the person's name.
Yes.
Right. So Greg comes up. Well, what can you do with Greg in half a second? Right. So people are thinking. Once they have an image, then they're really quick at associating.
Yeah.
Right. See what I mean? So remembering names is a really good creative exercise if you want to get into and train that area of your brain.
Yeah, that's awesome. So 2 questions from what you've just said. The first question is, when you see, I can't imagine a scenario where you do this. Maybe when you're looking at your kids' maths homeworks, do you see stories instead of numbers?
Well, here's the thing. I failed maths miserably at school and at university. I mean, it took me 3 extra years to get my degree because I kept failing this math subject. And this was obviously before memory techniques. And once I learned memory techniques, I was teaching, the specialist mathematics at schools. It's just bizarre how it works. So when I look at the kids, mathematics is one of those things where it's just totally abstract. You either get it or you don't. So in order for students to understand mathematics, you have to explain it in a way that it's like a story. You have to give them scenarios. You have to draw images and represent numbers in a way where it's encoded in children's brains. So that's a really powerful way of learning mathematics and teaching it as well.
Yeah, and I know it's another way that you're helping people, which I know is your mission, and I know that you've helped children as well who have difficulty reading, and things like that. But my question specifically is, when you look at a bunch of numbers, like we would see numbers, I would see numbers, whether it's your kids' maths homework or a pack of cards maybe, or another scenario where you're looking at numbers, do you see a story there? Do you see it in a different way that I'd look at it?
Because not really, no. No, I mean, I see it as is. And if I want to create a story, if I want to memorize it or do it the way I want, then I'd see a story from there. So it's not something that automatically comes in. I see something different. The world is completely different. It's just a bunch of numbers. Like if I don't use techniques, I'll forget like anyone else. I'll be impacted like anyone else. So it's just like you said before, it's turning on that switch. Once I turn on that switch, then I know how to do it. Right. For example, with the memorizing of the phone book, right, that was 20,000 digits that I memorized in 24 days. Right. And I made stories out of them. Now, if I wasn't using stories, I wouldn't have memorized more than 3 digits, right? Just by looking at the numbers, because for me, it just doesn't make sense. So it's the same thing. I could easily have seen just the numbers and be overwhelmed, or I could sort of look at the numbers and say, okay, I'm just going to make a story because that's how I'm going to remember it. So it's really a choice.
Yeah,
rather than naturally seeing. Yeah,
very cool. So the other one will come back, but you've talked about memory palettes. So just on the memory, the memory strategies, you've talked about memory palettes, you've talked about creativity. Give us just a little insight into memory palaces before we move on from the memory strategies, because I love that one. The locations and the locations, all of that.
Yeah, it is I guess the sexy name for it now is Memory Palace, but I never used to use that actually. Probably in the last few years because it's been on TV a lot, and people have always saying, "Oh, this has been on this episode." I'm like, well, I've never seen it, but yeah. So Memory Palace, method of loci, the ancient Greeks used to call it. So that's what I sort of go by and what I've written in my books. So I'll go by the original titles. I used to also call it the location method, as you mentioned earlier. Extremely powerful technique. And what it is just creating holding spots to hold the information in your brain, right? So just like folders on a computer, we've got thousands of files, right? Imagine if we put all our files on a desktop, but how would you remember and find what you're looking for?
Yeah, chaos.
Right? That's what happens when we repeat stuff in our head, or if we're not using any systems, right? If we're storage, filing cabinets, why have we got filing cabinets? To give a bit of order and find what we want straight away. So it's the same thing with the memory palace. You're creating these folders in your brain, and just chucking in information, right? And then if you need it, you go to that folder and retrieve that information anytime you want. So that's the power of a memory palace. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. And how does it give us a little bit of info about the locations and the what do you call them? The locuses and then the locations and the how items and things like that.
Yeah. So how it works is the memory palace has a set location that you walk around and attach items to be remembered, right? So for example, what people generally do to start off with is they use their house.
Yes.
Right? And they create locations around their house in order because you're memorizing in order and you're recalling in order. So what I do, for example, I'll give you the first, 4 or 5 locations of my house. My first location is the front of my house. So I start off with my front fence, right? That's my first location. My second location is my front door. Then third location, open the door to my house. There's a whole bunch of areas, but I go into the bedroom. But instead of saying bedroom, I'm going to pick one specific thing because it's about really attach it to specific items when you're memorizing. So I'm going to say my bed because it's in my bedroom. Then I'm going to go into my little ensuite. I've got a shower in there, right? So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do 5, right? So I've got those locations. They're the folders I've created, right? And I know those folders because I know my house. And people can generally write this down. They don't have to memorize it, right? You keep it as a reference. Then if you want to remember something, what you do is you get that list that you want to remember and you make a story with those items in the location. So I'll give you a little example, right? Let's say we went shopping together and the first item we went and got was milk, right? Now I have to make a story. Remember we talked about stories, right? Using our imagination, being all creative. Milk with my front fence, right? So if I asked you what story can we create with milk and front fence, what could you create?
You've put your milk carton on the front fence for the birds to drink from. So you've got like a bird fountain.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I was picturing something a bit more violent, but that's good. Yeah. See, the brain loves drama. It loves moving parts. If it's static images, it doesn't necessarily like it because it's not engaged by it. So what I've done is I've thrown milk cartons all over the fence, and it's just all messy. And maybe the birds came and started drinking from that then. So, crashing, burning, all that sort of stuff is a lot more powerful, right? Okay, so number 2 was my front door. So let's say we get onions, right? So what story can you make with onions and my front door?
Well, I don't want to be too mean, so I'll just go. Sally version is, like a Christmas garland, but you've made it all out of onions.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It could even work as a door,
Nice.
door knocker or whatever they're called. Can't remember now. But yeah, nice. And smelling onions too. You can smell it.
Yes.
And, you can picture Tony Abbott out the front, munching away on my,
Your raw onions.
Yeah. So the more you add into it, the more creative you get, the easier it becomes to remember. Okay. So next one. So number 3, went inside and that was my bedroom. So bed, right? So let's say bed and mobile phone, right? I'm just saying mobile phone. Well, what story can you make with my bed and mobile phone?
Your kids have hidden your mobile phone under your duvet and you're going in, where's my mobile phone? And I'm getting into it now. And you're fluffing up your duvet and then you find it in there.
Awesome. Love it. See, that's good. Yeah, a bit of emotion in there, and awesome. And you can use, positive emotion or negative emotion, right? Anything between neutral doesn't necessarily work that well. So, and that's what we do within milliseconds. Like I said, when we're memorizing, it's just bang, 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 all of these stories. Now, when you're obviously going through slow, you can add so much more detail. But in competitions, we don't have a second even. We just go bang, 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 bang. Yeah. So next one, fourth was my shower. So shower, and let's say coffee.
Coffee. Okay. Well, I know you love your coffee, but you were in a bit of a rush. So you've taken your coffee into your shower and then you got soap in your eyes and so you've grabbed your coffee and you're washing with your coffee.
Yeah, cool. Nice coffee smelling.
And your smell of coffee.
There you go. And the final one, I think I said my toilet, but it was really sink. So I'm going to say sink and keys. So sink and keys.
You've bent over to get your coffee out of your eyes and your keys have fallen down your sink and you grab them just at the moment they're about to go forever.
Wow, that's good. That's good. It's even better if you lose them though.
Oh.
Yeah, it's even better because then you're in more pain. Yeah. Right? So you're either in really high elation or in more pain. So whatever works best. Saving could work for some people or losing could work. So it's either. So always, get the result. So let's go back now to my locations. So what was happening at my fence? What was the word there?
Easy. So you were making a mess and me and the birds were tidying up the milk.
Yes. Then my front door.
And we got to the front door and there's this overstenching smell and it wasn't Tony Abbott, it was his onions.
Right. My bed.
You go to your bed and now you're in a bit of a flap because you can't find your mobile phone.
Yeah. Shower.
So you go into your shower and you're in a rush now because you were looking for your mobile phone and getting Tony Abbott out of your doorstep. So you're accidentally washing coffee.
Yeah. And the sink.
And then you accidentally drop your keys down the sink and you grab them just at time.
That's it.
That's awesome.
Gone through the memory palace and you've created associations to remember. So that's how it works. Now, the good thing is we can create memory palace, like locations as far and long as we want. Like I've got 60 around my house, right? And I just naturally go around the kitchen and bathrooms and, all the way to the back, right? I've also got 300 walking down the street, right? I'm going to, petrol stations and cafes and, McDonald's stores and all of that. And I've got location, and that's just off the top of my head, right? So you can create as many or as little as you want and practice that way. But the training of that is way more powerful than the remembering itself. And that's what I noticed, going back to your first question of the side benefits of all the memory techniques is come from just one little exercise like this. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, this is brilliant because this is giving people a real sense of some of the strategies, but also the benefits. So let's leave the strategies now and go into those side effects, which are, what it's all about, really. So one thing that came up to me while you were talking about the emotions, I was wondering if memory experts are therefore, if you'd have, I don't know, I'm just musing, but whether there'd be a higher level of emotional intelligence, because just as you're able to be creative in the moment, you're also having to come up with different emotions in the moment. So I wonder if you'd have a bigger breadth of emotions and be able to tap into them easier, just wondering.
Look, that is a really good question. I haven't dug into it myself personally, so I wouldn't know, but I can tell you this, though, there are side effects. Negative side effects from memory as well. So if I'm in a sad state or if I'm feeling down, that feeling is accentuated even more now, right? Because I'm not just visualizing and feeling the moment, I'm feeling it at a greater level. Do you see where I'm getting at? So the only way to get around that is just be mindful of it. And I didn't know for years that this was happening, but then I became mindful of it. So every time that happens now, I know how to redirect. Right, to other areas, and that's the real power of memory.
So that's brilliant, Tansel, because you're accentuating that because of your training, but that's relevant for everybody to notice when we are in an emotion that isn't necessarily serving us past the initial time that it was going to serve us. You know, the chemicals running through the body that create the emotion last, you know, between 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Anytime we're sitting in the emotion after that, we're ruminating. We're doing it because we're choosing to do it. So having the mindful awareness that that's what we're doing and that we can take ourselves out of that, it's relevant for anybody. So that's really great. And I'm glad also that you caught it. But the opposite would also be true, right? You must have that for elevated emotions too. So the ability to kind of really get into them.
Yeah, it's about understanding. You got to really look at it from a bird's eye view. It's like, okay, I could easily get caught up here and get elevated and get excited. You know, it's about understanding, okay, just calm down, just look at everything, relax. Okay, what am I trying to do? What's my aim here? And just look at things from a higher perspective. So, you know, and you can do that by externalizing yourself as well, right? You can just put the situation away, view it from a third person and say, okay, what's really going on here in my life? And I work a lot with people that are stressed, right? That don't necessarily want to improve their memory. They just want to have balance in their life, or they want to be able to, you know, do the things that they really want to do. And they're the people that most come to me, because once you know how to use that, that mental ability of being aware, being mindful, now you can start to make changes accordingly. Because if you don't know, you don't know. But now that you know, you can redirect that mental energy to more positive areas, or you can redirect to more painful areas as well, because there's benefits to both.
Yeah,
really fascinating.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'm guessing, because I know you're really effective with things like stress management and also goal setting. That's kind of an awesome area too, or not goal setting perhaps, but you know, achieving what you want to achieve in life. You know, you have a unique take on goal setting. But back to stress, I am imagining the techniques that you teach, whether directly or non-directly, also help people to be able to choose, you know, how much we go into the past and live there, dwell there, and how much we go to the future, and whether we're choosing to go into positive futures or negative futures, because none of them have yet happened. So where are you going to put that attention and time? And how much control you have over where your brain's efficiency and processing goes. Like, you are the director of it.
Absolutely. I always say to people, I always ask them, I say, can you change the past? Right? And if I asked you now, if you say, can you change the past, what would you say?
Well, you can. I know a little bit about the brain to know you can, you know, memories aren't accurate anyway, and you can go in and kind of work with them. But can you change what's happened yesterday? No,
you can't change that, but you can change what you think about it. Right. So that's what people don't know, because they live with their thoughts on the past as well. So if you just let them know that, hang on, you know that you can change that situation instead of just ruminating on all the time. You can just change that storyline. It's already happened, so you can do whatever you want, right? As long as it makes you feel a lot better and you're moving on instead of you ruminating all the time. Or what you can do is you can create a better future. Better visualization. The trick, however, there is your story for the future has to be a lot bigger than the one that you're ruminating on now in the past. That's the struggle that people get into, because they try and create this amazing future. They're thinking of good things, positive thoughts and ideas, but they just can't get past their past on what's happened. And that's because that story is just too big. So you have to create something a lot bigger. And that's where memory training comes in, because now you know how to use your senses, you know how to use movement, you know how to exaggerate, add color. All of these memory principles, if you apply it to creating a better future, guess what's going to happen? That story is going to get bigger eventually and supersede the negative one. And what you can also do using memory techniques as well, it can also teach you to forget. So if you have some past that is, you know, nagging you, instead of, because remember, the stories that we have in our mind are really colorful, really bold. We could see it like we're there, right? And that's how we make things memorable. In order to not make it memorable, you do the opposite. It's like at school, we're taught difference equations. You put the minus sign on the other side, it becomes a plus, and so forth, right? So what we want to do is we want to picture that scenario in gray, right? Gray color, the brain can't process as much, right? Picture it in gray and you externalize yourself, and then see that image getting smaller and smaller, right? And then you keep focusing on this small image, right, of gray. What happens is that eventually that moment in time becomes like insignificant, right? And then you create a better future. So you're using a lot of these mental strategies to move forward, but also get rid of sort of past stuff that's happened as well.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And in that, you know, you mentioned bigger, but in that, of course, is the emotional aspect that you talked about too. So changing up the emotions and all of that. So with that, I want to ask you about, because I know it's a little bit personal, but I know you talk about it, that you have been a sufferer of Crohn's disease. And at one stage, it was so bad, you could barely function, really. You had bouts of this extreme pain, and you know, you were telling me you couldn't even go and pick your kids up from school, get out the car, like walk very far at all. Really disabilitating. And there's many people out there who are suffering from conditions that keep them limited. And this summit is all about overcoming our limitations so that we can do more, be more, whatever that is in our lives as we choose. So I'd love to ask you about that, because you're really, I know you're very humble and you're going to downplay this, but I know you have, you know, you are a massive success story and you've had this condition. So it is phenomenal how, you know, you've traveled the world with a condition that at one point you couldn't get out of bed with. So tell us a bit about that and how this brain training has helped you with your physical condition.
It's funny because when you look at these situations, you think of, you know, willpower. Oh, they've got, you know, strong willpower, all that stuff. I've got crap willpower. So I never really relied on that. Right. And yeah, you're right. I have traveled the world and I've been on planes, you know, in, you know, business class where they fly you to all these amazing destinations in complete pain with no painkillers, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, in bed for how long, you know, traveling around. And, you know, it's, for me, again, that story of excitement of the travel and visiting places and doing stuff. I guess I was always curious. So the curiosity and the hunger to, you know, make a difference, that story was a lot bigger than, you know, having pain. And you also got to remember, pain is not, it's not there forever, right? So if I was in pain, yeah, I mean, previously I used to stay in hospital for 5 to 10 days. Right. But now I know how to manage it at home. And yes, I'm in extreme pain for 2 days, you know, vomiting black blood and all that sort of stuff. Like it can get pretty grossed out. Right. But I know that it's not going to last. So I'll just end up doing what I like doing, what I enjoy doing. Yes, I am grateful for being alive and doing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm really trying to make a difference and show people that these strategies are really helpful. And one of the reasons why I got into it, because I wish I knew it earlier and I did it from frustration. So it's that excitement element that's driving me. You know, I'm really, I mean, I love life, you know, so there's a lot to love about life, a lot of amazing people, a lot of amazing things to do. So that's what sort of drives me. I could say I'm driven, you know, by those things that I really love and passionate about. But yeah, when it comes to, you know, illnesses like this, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are much worse. And, you know, there are cases where you can get down, you know, be totally down for, you know, as long as it takes. And that's okay. You know, we saw that with COVID as well. And people saying, oh, no, I'm not working as hard now. I'm not making as much money. Well, so be it. You know, be in that state. Don't feel sorry for yourself or anything. Just you know, be in that moment, you know, assess yourself, you know, analyze what you want to do, all that sort of just really, I'm not going to say enjoy the process. I mean, it's not good, but just be in the present. I think that's really the key. And then, you know, you're not going to be there for long. So it's just continuing on with life from there. So really, there's not much lessons, so to speak. It's more about, you know, what are you excited about? You know, because for me, that excitement has got me to where I want. I mean, traveling to another country to speak, mine's blown. I'm like, how awesome. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You know, that's more exciting than anything else, you know? So it's like, nothing's going to stop me from doing that, you know? So yeah, it's just excitement for me work, because the story was a lot greater than, oh no, I'm going to die. You know, there's too much pain and suffering. Yes, you do get to that stage. But it doesn't last very long, and you start thinking of the bigger picture.
And what about anxiety? Because I know that you help people with anxiety too, and that can be a factor, an element of physical and mental conditions that keep us limited, right? And I know, if you've got a physical condition and its repercussions, or if we're talking about COVID and its repercussions, here's anxiety, here's worry, here's things. And I know that you've got, you help people with this, again, because of your brain training. What would you say to people who are, suffering from anxiety and or mental conditions, worry, depression, low mood, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, gee, I had anxiety for a very long time, and I didn't even know I had it. I had no idea. Once I knew I had it, I pretty much fixed it, so to speak. In 2 weeks, I got rid of it because I knew what I was up against. So I guess the number one thing is to be aware, like, have you got anxiety? Go to a doctor, get checked out, all that sort of stuff, and be aware of what you've got. For me, I had travel anxiety. So that just meant someone with a bowel condition, if I'm stuck in traffic and there's no bathrooms anywhere, I'll start sweating and I'll be wanting to go more, and it'll just be the worst feeling in the world, right? Even though really, when you think about it, it's not that bad. I mean, people go through that anyway. It's just, especially, we're doing long distances, but it got to a stage where, I couldn't even pick up my kids from school, which was just 5 minutes away, because I'd be scared that halfway through I'd be, busting and all of that. And then that was the trigger for me to understand what the hell was going on. And what fixed it was obviously being mindful of it and just relaxing, breathing, all that visual stuff that I was talking about earlier with memory, about just being calm, because that calmness, because what happens if you've got anxiety, your heart sort of starts to race a bit, right? Almost, I mean, I've never had a panic attack, but that's what it can sort of lead to as well. So calmness brought me down a bit. And remember, anxiety is also visualizing a worst scenario. That's what it is. So you're using storytelling to make things worse. And because I knew memory was storytelling, so I was like, okay, what am I looking forward to? Again, I used excitement as a trigger for me. It doesn't have to be excitement for people that are tuning in, listening to this. It could be something else, right? So for me, if I was traveling somewhere and I was stuck in traffic and I was really desperate and busting to go, and I had all these anxiety levels, I'd be thinking about, okay, my end destination, what am I, trying to get? Am I getting to a family member? Oh, I missed them. When was the last time I saw them? All that sort of stuff. Or I'm going to a particular job. Oh, I'll start to plan out my talk or something like that. So I really get into the mode of end result of what I'm looking at, rather than the present of, oh no, I'm struggling. So it's almost like, don't be in the present, which is, counterintuitive in some ways, but so I'm just distracting my mind from, the struggle that I'm going through. And that's worked for me a lot.
Yeah. And again, with your training, you're able to take control and redirect your brain's power to where you want to focus it on, which is, I think, a really good tip for everyone. And, brought to mind as well, we know that it's possible to push ourselves to these amazing feats. On this summit, we've got Alex Hutchinson talking about, he's written this book called Endure, and it's all about people who push themselves to ridiculous limits physically. But we know, don't we? We all have heard of the person that can pick up the car to free the kid. And in that moment, you're not thinking about what my actual strength limit is. You're thinking about rescuing the child under the car. And we've all heard these stories. So we know we can access something that takes us beyond what we think we can do. And this is kind of what you're tapping into, I think. It's like, now you have this ability to direct your brain. You can get past. So it is about being in the moment too, because you really, you're talking about when those anxious feelings, sensations, thoughts come up, you're able to be present enough to go, okay, my heart's racing too much. I need to slow my breathing down. Okay, these thoughts are happening, which is worst case scenario. I need to change them up. So it's being present enough to be able to be aware of you, and then redirecting yourself to a place that can access something more than you could if you were encased within that present of pain and, that kind of thing. So I think that's really useful to everyone. Tansel, I want to ask you one last question. You've given us so much. You've given us so many practical tips. Of course, we're going to put where we can find you, because you're not just a memory coach, you're an everything coach. You help people to learn faster and better, more effectively, speed reading, stress management, all of these things, as well as helping us with our brains work better, and of course memory. So I would highly recommend that everyone look up your books and look up your website and your YouTube and just get in touch with you. But if I could ask you, I'm asking everybody this question: what is one thing, or what could you say to people that will make the most impact? What's one thing that people could do today that if they did it, it would help them get to the next level? What was one tip you could give us to just do that would have the biggest impact?
It's funny you ask that question, because I always ask that question to when I run my speaking seminars. At the end, it's like, what's one thing you can do today? And look, there's a number of things, but what I usually get people to say is create an audit of what you need in your life. What are your weaknesses? What do you need help with? Right? And write a list down. A lot of people don't do this, right? Because when we try to remember off the top of our heads, we can only remember a few things, right? But if we write down a list, we tend to keep writing things like 10, 20, 30, 40 things. So write down a list of what you need help with. So whether it's with anxiety, or whether it's with, financially, or whatever it may be, smallest to big, it doesn't matter. Write down those things and you might be surprised what comes up. And then go and seek help for those things. So, I started memory just by Googling, right? That's how I started memory. I Googled it, right? You can Google, you can go to the library, you can research, you can speak to the people. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm not here for good looks, right? I'm here because obviously I want to get this out there. So reach out to people. There's amazing people in your summit. I always say, look, reach out. Don't try and reinvent the wheel, right? Because there's a lot of people wasting so much time and effort where they could have just gone directly to the source, right? So create an audit, write down all the things that you need help with, and go straight to the answer, so you can get the best possible help for it. And you'll find that that's probably the quickest way to where you want to go.
Yeah, awesome. And I know you're big on taking action, which this is, right? It's like be aware. So spend some time looking at yourself and then take action. Don't just sit and visualize for an hour. Take action. That's going to help you get to the next level. Yeah.
I mean, you can visualize all you want, but that's not going to, help you at the end of the day. It might make you feel a little bit better, but if you keep doing it for too long, it becomes false hope as well. So for me, I've taken the opposite approach. I do stuff, and then once I fail, I analyze that, and just keep getting better with accepting failure as well, and understanding how things work. So there's people out there putting off things because they're perfectionists, or they can't get into it at this stage. I just say, look, just go and do it. See how you're impacted by it, what you learn from it, and then move along. And that's the best thing. So action, perfect, like you said.
Yeah, and the two things are important, aren't they? Having that intention, which is why you're saying to people that write it down, spend some time with yourself, getting to have those intentions of why you want to improve, and then go take action. Two things have to come hand in hand. Tansel, you're a superstar. I love you dearly. Thank you for all that you do in the world. Thank you for joining us at the summit. Thank you for spreading your knowledge and wisdom and experience. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you. All the best with the whole summit.